Okay, I think this is part 2 of the first game. Game 1, 1200 rated daily chess. My Dutch defense, that kind of fell apart. I think my ideas of how to do the Dutch defense are pretty wrong. I think this is where we left off, where I decided to end up moving the knight. So I was thinking about this Dutch defense. I think this pawn or this pawn should be going up next. I think actually what I'm used to doing is this pawn. But that wouldn't really have made a difference. I think you just want to get your bishop on this line. But obviously if they're just going to sack stuff. I mean, this was probably too eager to do stuff. I'm not really sure what that pawn is achieving other than trying to push this pawn later. Yeah. So, how did we get up to? He pushed the pawn forward. I moved the knight. We were talking about this trading sequence down the e-file. So I ended up deciding to put the knight out here with hopes of pushing the bishop off one of these two squares to go either here where it's a bit more passive or preferably even back. It might be a shield for the king, but we were attacking this pawn at one point until he pushed that forward. So he moved his knight, which was a bit of a random move, but I think actually no, this was where we left off the last video. He is essentially guarding the bishop with his queen now. So I decided on moving the pawn up and to start the trade sequence. I can't remember why, because I did say it would be bad for me. Right, so he decided to push that pawn to here, to the e5. We take the pawn. So this is actually kind of, in a weird way, better than me. Now he has to really move the bishop because this is going to be a nasty fork that's now protected. Yeah, so I think the game plan was to push this back because that was one of the protectors of the pawn. So I went back to this plan after I moved the knight. That is what's happened. And then, yeah, take. So I think he took here. Yeah. So I figure at this point, okay, why don't we just continue pushing the pawn? You know, he actually can't take that pawn. There's only the bishop and the queen still guarding it. So we can just like force the knight round now. Yeah, so he moves that to safety. And then we're thinking, I'm not used to playing this kind of aggressive game, and I should probably play more. I do well when I play more aggressive. I don't know why I play so defensive with stuff. I mean, looking at it now, there's ideas of putting the queen here to go up here. This is what I'm trying to not do, is give him chance to castle on this side. So the realistic kind of options I had in mind were bishop. Do you do this? Yeah, to here, which then is attacking here, and then here, it's kind of too slow. Is there a way to get rid of the arrows? Yeah. The other option would be to just push this pawn further up the e-file. And by doing that, we're just attacking his pawn here, which would trade probably both, but it would leave the king open, but actually an open file for his castle, which also doesn't feel good. I mean, that is the best I can hope for on this side if I can ever get that bishop out. But that's not ideal. And then we just saw the move knight to d3. So we're forcing him to move the king with this play. He actually, unless he wants to trade it with the queen, cannot take this because the pawn is protected still by the queen. So we're forcing him to move the king. I believe, hoping he would move somewhere else than this, but because I still wanted to have this queen come up the middle. So I believe this is the position we're at. No, I haven't made that move. Yeah. So we're thinking about options now. We've stopped him from castling. opponent from castling. We still have this idea of the bishop to this square, which is actually now more appealing because we can take this pawn is at the moment unguarded. It's kind of awkward to guard because he cannot put the queen or the castle there without losing it to the knight. And this bishop's just going to target the king. It's going to be a discovered check. The knight is free to move here, for example, and that would be devastating because he would essentially lose a queen for doing all this. The other kind of options we've had a look at is actually, can we take that off? Yeah. Is moving the queen over here. And this is obviously threatening checkmate on the next move. Cannot be stopped that easily. If he's going to put the pawn out, we can take. And then if he was to take with the h-file pawn, that's going to leave the castle open, which then means a queen trade or whatever. It would be up a castle, which would mean he has to do this. Now this is more uncomfortable for me than the other option. See, he can only go here or to here. That's not particularly great position. Now the problem with doing all this series is we get one move initiative. The knight is going to be unsafe when that pawn is taken. I think we had ideas of even putting this bishop into play. Which is not going to work if his king's next to the castle because we can't sack it for the pawn. But if his king had gone over here somewhere, no, because that would also be protected by the queen. This just feels too slow, you know, it just feels like, you know, we're going to lose stuff by doing this. This doesn't, it kind of looks okay, but it doesn't feel okay. I think it's actually losing, even though we like that the king is very open by doing this. Let's go back a stage. And this is where we are. So the other kind of options are, we thought about, let's push the pawn. Now we can't push this pawn because we just lose the knight on the very next turn. We have some like kind of delaying movements like this, pushing his bishop, which is going to keep the knight safe for more of a long-term position because he's going to move the bishop probably to here, to be honest. It's a very annoying square. Rather than back, he could move it back. But this allows us to eventually get this bishop into play, and which then means we can castle and we can just like target the king that cannot swap places with his castle. So that's a good option. Pushing the pawn, not sure what entirely that would do. Yeah, he could well, you can't even take it back, so it kind of opens up the white square diagonal, but we don't really have anything coming at that angle. So the only other idea would be to get this into play, like we said earlier. And this would obviously tag that pawn, which is difficult to defend. Now, I see his response to this would be knight to c6, which is threatening the queen. But we could have used this as momentum to kind of then do this play. Because at least then, when we start doing all this pawn maneuvering, we at least have a bishop that can then come into play a little bit over here. And then potentially this, if he'd move his king to that side, this bishop could come. There's one other place he could move that king, right? So could have gone here. He could have gone there. Which would be more favorable if I was to do this trade. I don't think he'd do that. I think he'd put his king here. Actually, yeah, that's actually not the end of the world because you could have could do things like this, right? And then if we had that pawn out, we would have the bishop moving as well. Yeah, so I think that's probably the ordering we're looking at. Now, this whole plan is not sure what he's going to do. None of these moves are particularly forcing. Let's put that bishop back. I think we would use the pawn first. Left side attack. We want to get this bishop to wherever. Don't know where we'd put it. Maybe we'd even put it back. But this is going to allow us to move this bishop out later on. We're going to put this bishop out now. And then he's free to move whatever. I would expect him to do this. And then we'll go here. Well, actually, if he's put his bishop there, it would actually be a really bad thing for him to do that. Because you now can't put the pawn here to block that. See, the other thing he can actually do is do something where we're defending like this as well. That's another option. And then we'd actually push here, I suppose, but that would be the case. He doesn't need to put it on that square necessarily. He could put it on one of these two. I think that's the basis of the idea for now. I think we just immediately push that bishop off, because the other thing is when he starts to do other things, we're reacting. We can always get this out the way in castle, and then we've got our castle staring on the same file as the king. So that's what we'll do. We'll set off that move in action, see where things go.